Just to take you a little a bit back, Arjun, you mentioned about how COVID situation and everything has created issues for business across the globe. What are because you've started something on your own, for anybody who's a young entrepreneur or wants to get into that kind of field, what are these two three things that you will tell him or her to definitely do, and then two three things one should definitely not do while you're in the entrepreneur, while you are in the journey of becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I would say that the thing which is very, very important is to have a plan, and one should know that where he wants to go and what he wants to do. Like I was very clear that I want to just stick to sports clothing. I got many, many opportunities and calls from people that give us sports equipment also. You're in the same industry and it's very easy for you to source. But then you deviate from what you're doing. You're not at the on your path. So that's when I stopped doing any other orders except from clothing. I focused on what I was doing. So that is one very, very important thing, that you have to be focused and you should have a plan of what you want to do. Then the second most important thing is to take baby steps. Like it's very important to take small, small steps, because if at that point of time when I started with 5 machines or 10 machines, I would have probably involved 40 machines. But then to handle those many machines at that point when I was very young in the business and I didn't know much, because once you start doing something, then is the time when you start learning more things. When you read and when you listen to things, it's not like the 100% knowledge of that particular business you get. It's you have to be in that situation, you have to be present in that situation, and then you have to learn. So it's very, very important to be in the situation, learn, have a plan, take small steps. It's important to have a bigger plan, but always very, very small steps to reach that ultimate destination where you want to go. So the thing that, business, it was very easy for me to deviate to sports equipment as well. But then I would have probably suffered somewhere or the other. You're not focusing
Because
on what
you're
you're doing and you're focusing on other things which are not very important. So yeah, so three things I would say that one should not do is not to deviate from your plan even after getting success. And what else? I don't know. Probably these only. I cannot remember anything right now.
so what's the plan in future? Like you just mentioned that you are in an expansion mode and you're spreading in different other countries. And where do you see Credburst in the future? Let's say in the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah. So currently, because of COVID, we don't have much business. So at the moment, we are strengthening our internal processes, so that in the future, when we get back in proper shape and the markets open, then our systems don't fail or crash. Because handling orders from 38 different countries will take a lot of toll and a lot of planning, and you have to have key people in the right places. It's very important to have the right person at the right time. So in at this point, we are working on strengthening our internal processes. Two, we are currently trying to involve technology into our business. So we recently started our website, but it's still in the process. We are still evaluating it every day, and we are getting it right. Then the second thing, we'll probably launch our app also very soon, so that people can easily buy things or order things on the phone. Then also internally, people can check where the order has reached, or if it's in the cutting stage or in the printing stage. So we are trying to make an internal software where just the person can just place their order number and they can find where the order is, so that they don't have to ask a particular customer care person about the order. So these are the things that we are working on right now, and hopefully we are hoping that September onwards things will get better globally, and we'll probably expand from there.
Right. And we have some questions which just came to us from the audience. So one of these questions is regarding the selection process in the Ranji teams or even in the state level teams or even in the national teams. So can you give us some insight on that? Like we hear a lot of things about the selection process. So Rakshit here asked us if Arjun sir can tell us a little bit about the selection process and if there are any, let's say, biasness or politics that happens in the process or something. If you want to answer that, Arjun.
Yeah, so I would say, Lakshay, that cricket is a game which is blessed with politics. It's because that so many people are involved, so much fame and money is involved, that it is tend to happen that biasness does come in play. But I would say that a person who's very talented and is outstanding uh, finds his way. Like if today I have to blame someone of not playing for the India, it's me because there were times that I didn't perform well and I should have maybe probably I didn't perform at the right time or the right place. That's why I'm not playing for the country. So it's very important for a person to be in the right frame of mind and play well at the right time. So the selection process, like every state has its own selection process. In Delhi, you have to first play the cricket league, then you have to perform, and then your club. So there are 130 clubs, approximately 130 clubs in Delhi. They send your name to the association. Then the association shortlists your name, and then they have the trials. So about 4 to 500 people in each age group they come up for the trials, and then the selection committee they see them on the nets. Now, if I see, it's very difficult to judge a player in the nets, and it's literally impossible for any state association to have cricket matches or give enough opportunity to 400 people. So it's a problem of the numbers. People need to understand that it's the problem of the numbers that it's very difficult to cater so many people. Though cricket associations they keep thinking about it on how to make the process simpler and a bit unbiased, but then it is tend to happen. You cannot stop it. Now, if we talk about wicket keeping, now a wicket keeper can only be judged by how he's catching the ball, which is very subjective. Like if Roy probably likes the way Parthiv Patel is catching, but he doesn't like the way Dhoni is catching. For yeah, it's easier to judge a batsman because how many runs he is scoring. So if a batsman is scoring more runs, he's good and he should be selected. But then if you see the inside, a fast bowler, he didn't take any wicket, but he bowled really well, or probably 2 3 catches were dropped while he was bowling. And some other bowler who was not really good, he got 3 wickets probably on a full toss or on a very bad delivery. So these things also happen in cricket, and people go on to say that like the selectors are biased or the association is biased. I said they are at some level they are, but then only the ones who are very talented or who score very well in the games they are play for the country. Like Virat Kohli, I've seen him. He was just 2 years older to me. I've seen it from under 15s. He started scoring double hundreds, which was unheard of. So everybody knew that he's going to play for the country. So these things happen, but then you have to go through these.
Right. Have you ever shared the dressing room with Virat?
Yes,
And
yesterday only
if
I
you
was
can elaborate on that, there must be really
yesterday
interesting
only
stories over there.
yesterday only I was telling my wife while watching the match while Virat was batting that I remember we were playing a under 17 club match. So I used to play for Sonnet, and Virat came to play for Sonnet in that only one match. He scored 140, and in the second innings we were fielding. I was wicket keeping, and he was standing in the first slip. And he just started going for under 19 tours. So he was, I think, in the 12th standard. I think, yeah, he was in the 12th standard, and I asked him that when are your boards and what next, which college are you going to, and he had no clue that he didn't even know that he want to give the exams. And I said कि क्या मतलब क्या कर रहे हो क्या करोगे ऐसे फिर लाइफ में आगे कि अगर जब तुम कॉलेज ही नहीं जाओगे या एग्जाम ही नहीं दोगे. So I was just laughing and telling my wife that I was having this conversation with him, and look where he is right now. So yeah, these things one remembers, but all in good humor.
And so moving on, like in terms of the sports management thing, and I want to bring Tarun in here. So from a lawyer's perspective, Tarun, because we know that sports law is your, is your specialization. Can you please give us an insight about the legal perspective, the legal framework, if someone wants to be a sports entrepreneur, then what are the legal aspects, and what are like if a lawyer or a law student wants to take sports law as a profession, what are the like scopes and chances of that?
So, uh, look, first of all, one has to understand this thing, Roy, that people look when they talk about sports law, yeah, they think sports law works in isolation. One thing that one heads up that I want to give everybody who uh, wants to pursue sports law is that it's not necessary that you like sports, then you like sports law also, because sports is a very different aspect than sports law. Of course, when it comes to sports law, you're regulating sports, you're making policy for sports,